What is going on, Internet? My name is Fleming and welcome to my Thursday show. For those of you just tuning in for the first time, this is the show where I talk about all the things that I thought were interesting from the last couple of days. That being said, let's jump right into the first story of the day. The first thing that I want to talk about today, since I have spent so much time in the last couple of weeks talking about how 3D printers are used to make guns, is some of the positives that can come out of these machines. Every day, this 20-month-old baby from Ohio named Kaiba would either have serious problems breathing or stop breathing entirely because of a defect he was born with that caused part of his lungs to collapse. The prognosis that his family were able to get from the vast majority of the doctors that they went to was fairly grim. However, University of Michigan doctors were able to come up with something new. They designed a bio-reabsorbable splint that would be able to keep the part of his lungs that kept collapsing open, and they printed a custom one that would fit inside of him using a 3D printer. Due to this amazing technology, doctors were able to print exactly what they needed directly in the hospital. And because of this, Kaiba's prognosis went from most likely imminent death to completely stable. Turns out 3D printers aren't really all that bad. So on to my next story. Teenagers in Stockholm, Sweden have been rioting and burning pretty much anything they could for the last 4 days. The groups of people rioting are mostly immigrants, and no one, including their families, have been able to get them to stop. A lot of people think that the reason why they're rioting is because Sweden has a 25% unemployment rate for people under the age of 25. Unfortunately, there really isn't a whole lot that can be done about the situation because Sweden attracts a lot of immigrants, and obviously there aren't always jobs for them. One of the huge problems with having one of the largest and most luxurious social welfare programs in the world is that people are willing to move to your country without a job because they think the government's going to pay for everything. I completely understand that having a 25% unemployment rate for your age demographic really sucks, but it's hard for people our age to get hired anywhere. Even in the United States, 16 to 20% of people under 25 are unemployed, and 40% of recent college graduates are underemployed, meaning that they have a job that doesn't require a college degree. Who knows, maybe people in the United States will start lighting cars on fire for some reason other than winning the Stanley Cup. Anyway, on to my next story of the day. Some of you may remember reading a story about Kira Wilmot, a 16-year-old honor student from Central Florida who was expelled from school and charged with 2 felonies after a homemade science experiment exploded. This story reminded NASA veteran Homer Hickam of a time he was falsely accused of starting a forest fire as a child. Feeling for Kira's situation, Homer went out and got her a scholarship to the US Space Academy. Homer commented on the situation and said that he feels bad for kids nowadays because they don't have the opportunity to make mistakes. They're basically under a microscope all the time and they get in trouble for the silliest things. And honestly, I completely agree with him. Kids don't really have the opportunity to act up without people taking it way too seriously. And that brings me to my question of the day. Are kids being treated too harshly nowadays? Is that whole concept of kids just being kids completely gone? Leave your answers and comments in the comment section down below. Next, we are moving on to some incredibly important news about Paris Hilton, arguably the most important person on the planet. Paris just signed a contract with Cash Money Records. If that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to you, I completely understand, considering that Cash Money Records is associated with artists like Nicki Minaj, Drake, and Lil Wayne. She should be dropping her album soon. It is supposed to be an EDM style record and is produced almost entirely by Afrojack. Just as a side note, apparently Afrojack and Paris Hilton were dating at some point. I guess I completely missed that. So yeah, that's the thing now. Paris Hilton is a DJ or something. Let's move on to the next story. Eccentric millionaire and mega upload founder Kim.com is back in the news today. As many of you probably already know, Kim.com faces legal sanctions pretty much all over the entire world, and the legal fees are really starting to rack up, somewhere around the tune of $50 million. And as people do when they need to sign a $50 million check, they pull out the old, I'm gonna sue Facebook, Twitter, and Google card. Well, kind of. As it turns out, Kim.com owns the patent from way back in the day for two-step authentication. For those of you that are not familiar with what two-step authentication is, you know when you try to log into Gmail from your friend's computer and it says you can't log in until you enter in a code from a text message? That's two-step authentication, and it is used almost 1 billion times every single week by companies like Google, Facebook, and Twitter. As of right now, Kim.com has never filed for patent infringement because he's just such a nice guy. However, Kim.com did take the opportunity to remind the companies of this and basically said, since I haven't sued you, I think you should help me with my US legal fees. We'll see how this ends up working out. It feels a little bit like blackmail to me, but Maybe I don't really know what blackmail means. Anyway, that is all that I had to talk about today. I hope you guys learned something. As always, hit that subscribe button, like, share, and I will see you guys tomorrow.